Hello and welcome to another edition of Power the Pen. I am LaWanna Bradford and I love being on this show because I have an opportunity to showcase for you some amazing women and men authors, as well as books that are designed to inspire and uplift women. And today is no different. I have an amazing guest, Gail Dixon, who is a best-selling author, speaker, teacher, influencer, creator of a movement, which we're going to get into. But it's about empowerment and being true to yourself, true to your voice, and showing up unapologetically in that. And in today's world, with all the ash and trash that's going on, we need to hear this message today. I believe it is very relevant, very timely, and it's going to, I believe, for those of you who are listening, cause you to lean in and ask, how can I take my seat of power and influence, connect to my true voice, to that heart-centered voice, in order to be the change that I want to see in the world? She is an expert in advocating for women, an expert in advocating in the connection of this heart-centered message. And today we want to showcase the work that she's done, which has culminated to this point in a book entitled Heal the World Through Language, Love, and Listening. So without further ado, let me bring Gail Dixon to the stage.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
You have been busy since we last spoke a year ago.
I have. And, you joined me in raising the power of your voice last year on May 20th for National Claim Your Voice Day. And we are coming up on this year's National Claim Your Voice Day on May 19th. And in celebration of this one-year anniversary of this self-declared holiday, we are publishing in a book the presentations from last year's event, along with some teachings about the process that we use to guide people to claim their voice, and some worksheets to help people as they explore naming, framing, and claiming their voice. And it's called Heal the World Through Language, Love, and Listening, because I really believe that it is when people find that God whisper, that purposeful truth in them, and find a way to share it with the world in love, that is when we connect and when we heal. And so it's important that as many of us as possible, in as many ways as possible, do that and raise our voices for good, because we need to drown out the negative messages that are bombarding us.
Yes, and there you can't turn on the TV or turn on the radio or go into the office without being faced with the negative message first. It's like you're trying to find that needle in the haystack for something good to celebrate, right?
Exactly.
And that's unfortunate. I was talking to my niece, Gail, this weekend, and she's 17, and I was telling her, I said, you're growing up in a world that, for me as a youth, I can't even relate to. I said, your childhood, your innocence has been stripped from you with just what you're dealing with. And she said, but that's normal. That's the only thing I've ever known. And I thought, how tragic, right?
Yeah. And, as I listen to young people talk to one another, they speak to each other in a tone of voice and in a disparaging way that, had we spoken that way when we were young, we would mean harm or degradation or diminishment. And that is not their intent. It is the culture that they're living in. And it's why it's so important to me that we take steps to change that culture, for us to take back the culture of civility, the culture of caring, the culture of affirmation and advocacy, the culture of love. We have lost the culture of love, and it is going to take our concerted collective effort to reclaim it.
I totally agree. So just tell us a little bit about you. Give us a little of your backstory as to why now. What was it in your journey and your lived experience that had you say, you know what, I can't sit on the sidelines anymore. I'm going to take what I see, package it in a way that is solution oriented. That I believe if people understand the truth that I'm speaking, can be effects, agents of change, I should say.
Okay, so I spent most of my career, most of my working life, being the mouthpiece for other people's voices, other people's truths, and other people's agendas. I was a teacher. I did training and technical assistance. I was an advocate in the nonprofit world. And I spoke up and on behalf of other people. And in that work, one day I was standing at a podium getting ready to deliver a speech about substance abuse prevention, which was my work at the time. And I opened my mouth to speak and I couldn't get a word out. Not a single. Okay, there we are. I found out that my diaphragm was paralyzed on both sides. So after 2.5 years at the end of an oxygen hose hooked up to a concentrator all the time, I was able to do a lot of reflection. And I, as we are wont to do in a crisis, I bargained with the Almighty. Many of us, when we are making those prayers and petitions, we say, if
Yes.
God, if source, if Allah, if universe, you grant me this, I will promise you that. And my bargain was that if I had the breath to speak, I was going to speak my own purpose, my own agenda, my own truth. And as I searched myself and looked for that truth, what became clear to me was that I so believe in the power of language and listening. And I needed to be the spokesperson for using language and listening in the sacred way that I believe they were intended, which is to connect, to create, to uplift and uphold, to do all of those positive things. You know, I'm a person of faith, and I believe that there's a reason that the Creator gave human beings the power of speech and the power of communication. And that is so that we can use it for good, so that we can use it to fulfill the Creator's dream of peace and love and harmony. And so I knew that I had to be the voice for the heart's voice. And that's where this movement was born.
I love that. That's such a beautiful story. And so those of you who are listening, we are here with Gail Dixon, who is the founder of the National Claim Your Voice Day, which we will be celebrating May 19th. And we are also here celebrating her latest book entitled The Heart's Voice, Healing the World Through Language, Love, and Listening. Gail, when you made this commitment and promise that you were going to use your voice for good, and you started to do that self-exploration, did you find it a little fearful and challenging to say, okay, I hear the messages that I need to speak, and I need to get out of my own ways.
Yes. I mean, let me tell you how much I realized I was so happy and comfortable being the well-trusted number two, being the microphone and the megaphone for other people, but not having to show myself.
Mm.
You know, I didn't, when I stood up and did public speaking on behalf of others, I didn't have to reveal myself. I didn't have to reveal my own heart, my own deepest yearnings. When you speak from and with your heart, there is a vulnerability there that can be daunting. And it's why it's so important to really embrace and claim and own our heart's voice. Because when we really fully own it, when we are standing in the power of that conviction, we know our heart's voice comes to us from God. It is not ours. It comes through us. It comes to us and through us. And therefore, we can stand in it strong and proud. And recognizing that, realizing that is part of the journey. And it's why, you know, and I really want to emphasize, LaWanna, that not everybody is meant to share their heart's voice on a big stage from a platform or a podium or a best-selling book. Sometimes that voice of purpose and that voice of love is meant to be spoken in conversation, in relationship, in our roles and responsibilities in our day-to-day life. We speak the heart's voice when we nurture our child. We speak the heart's voice when we care for an aging parent. We speak the heart's voice when we recognize the person who serves our meal or checks our groceries, and we take time to call them by name. Then we're speaking with the heart's voice. And we listen with the heart as well. We listen with the heart's ear when we stop thinking of our response while the other person is still talking. We listen with the heart's ear when instead of responding, yes, but, when someone makes a point or offers their opinion, we say yes, and. So we don't offer a contradiction, we offer an addition. That's listening with the heart's ear. And we do it all. The folks who are gifted with words, who share their heart's voice through their writing, perhaps are a little more adept at it, a little more experienced with it, and a little more intentional about it than folks who are just going through their day-to-day life. But make no mistake, every word spoken from the heart and every word spoken in love is equally important. And that includes how we speak to ourselves. And I don't know about you, but I can be harsher with myself than most anybody else in the world is with me.
Yes.
And my self-talk is more unkind than I would ever dream of being with you or someone else. It is really important.
You said a lot, Gail. I want to just unpackage this a little bit. So for the, and I love that you preface this by saying you may not be on a major stage, but we all live in our sphere of influence, whether it's our families, the jobs we go to, that attendant at the grocery store. We are in relation with one another, and it's how we show up for ourselves. And as you said, leaning in, listening outside of our heads, but in that heart space. And what my interpretation of what you're saying is, it gives us the permission to say, I'm allowing myself to be authentic in my expression, but
Yes,
I'm also allowing other people to be, right?
exactly.
So when you cancel out the but and say, and I'm saying, I see you, I hear you, and here's another perspective.
Here's the truth for me. You
Yes.
know, it's so interesting the things we do with language. And when we call something a name with a capital letter, we imply its singularity, the truth, capital T. When we use a lowercase letter, we imply that there can be many of those things. So when we are listening to someone else's truth, big T, we understand that there are all those other little t's that come in that don't contradict it.
Yeah, that's really powerful, and we do have to be intentional. I mean, we don't
Absolutely.
think about when you're growing up, you're learning language and how to relate and the art of expression and true communication. But what you're saying, it's a different skill set. It's really tuning in, I think, first to yourself, how
Mhm.
you're showing up, and I'm going to bring this in because we know there's a lot of conversation about diversity and equity and inclusion. How
Absolutely.
can we have equity and inclusion if we're not listening with the heart's voice?
We can't. The answer to that is we can't. We can't. If we do not bring our heart's ear to the conversation, we have negated that equity and inclusion. We have, our ear has tuned someone and their reality out if it's not open with the heart.
Many are saying that this is now the time for women to really rise. And we see that with a lot of movements. And this is no different. You're starting this movement that's, I think, going to make some people uncomfortable. What ask would you have of other women organizations or organizations supported by men designed to create this empowerment and table for humanity?
Okay.
What is the ask? What would you
The,
want
the,
to
the
see?
ask, the ask for me is to make a personal commitment to speaking and listening with your heart. And if you're so inclined, to connect with others who make that same commitment. We have a Facebook group called the Heart's Voice Movement Group, which is a place to connect. And, but to really just make that commitment in your own life, because what we know is that when we have a critical mass of people of like mind, we can move the needle. And if we're going to move the needle on the tone of our collective dialogue, which right now is so divisive and so negative, it is going to take a concerted effort. It's going to take many of us to counter those voices and to say we're raising our voice for good. Um, you know, it's interesting. One of the things that has come really true for me is that I think that people who are not speaking from the heart think if they speak louder and more forcefully, their truth is truer. When the heart speaks truthfully, sometimes it gets quieter. Don't we hear God in the whispers? Very few of us these days, there may be some who hear God thundering from the mountain, but most of us hear God in the whispers and in the silence and in our prayers. And so that's where we hear the heart's voice. And what that means is if the heart's voice speaks more gently, more softly, we need more of them raised if we're going to counter the shouts of hatred and negativity. So raise your voice, commit yourself in however wide your circles grow. Start with yourself and move the circle and move the ripple outward to all the spaces and places where you can speak and listen with the heart.
I love that. I'm going to get back to asking you to give us a few more points that we can implement immediately in our lives. But let's talk a little bit about this book.
Okay.
Um, you had the event last year, and you had different speakers on stage. But what was it that motivated you to say, "I want to take these collective messages and compile them in a book"? And then what do you hope to happen?
Well, two things. One is that all of the speakers, including you, shared such incredible wisdom. And I didn't feel as though, we had a fair amount of attendance at our event and people who downloaded the recordings as part of a VIP package, but it was a fairly small circle. And I felt as though what the speakers shared, which was really about their journey to naming, framing, and claiming their heart's voice, was such a powerful example. And the journey was articulated so clearly by all 6 of these speakers, who are very diverse, who share their heart's voice and apply their own wisdom in very different ways in the world. And I felt like that example needed to be out there. And so I thought, what should I do for this year's event? And I thought, what we'll do is publish last year's speakers, tuned up a little for writing, not as informal as the conversation we had last year, and accompany it with the teaching and the explanation of the process. So the book has teaching about the process of naming your heart's voice and 2 stories of people's journey to naming. And then some worksheets for readers to work through about naming their own heart's voice. And then we move to framing, and two authors talk about how they frame their heart's voice and how they put it out in the world and put it in context. So it comes sandwiched between the teaching and the worksheets. And the book really ultimately is published as a call to action, which is a call to action to all those who would read it and share it to name, frame, and claim their heart's voice in the world. And so we'll be launching the book on National Claim Your Voice Day. And on that day, we are inviting folks to join us, if they register for the event, to join us and give us 1 minute of their heart's voice wisdom. So we'll be providing the platform and the microphone to people who choose to participate on that day, sharing their voice.
I love that. And sometimes we don't realize that when individuals want to express themselves, they don't know where or how. And the fact that you have created this platform, as you said, come up 1 minute, share your truth, but you look at the collective, right? You're creating this beautiful symphony of individual powerful expression that is going to just resound on National Claim Your Voice Day on May 19th. It's pretty exciting.
It is exciting. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and for just all you do to really promote the power of the pen, because as I've said, language is a unique gift to us as human beings, a sacred gift. And it is so important that we use the power of that sacred gift in the best way possible for the world.
Yes. I totally agree. I want to do a quick breakaway because not only will we be celebrating National Claim Your Voice Day this month, but it is also Mental Health Awareness Month. And I think how timely, right? Because so many times individuals are crippled with not knowing how to express the challenges, the anguish that they're facing, and then
Mhm.
they end up either imploding or exploding.
Bet.
So I want to do this quick breakaway, and we'll come back, chat a little bit about that, and then I want to ask you, what three key points would you like to leave with our audience? Okay.
Okay, sounds good. What a great video. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome. Well, I'm going to turn it over to you, if you don't mind. Talk a little bit about how claiming your voice is your seat of power, but also if you wouldn't mind leaving us just three tips that we can use.
Sure.
Okay.
So, indeed, you have inside you an incredible power, a power to be used for good in the world. And that is the power of your voice. Inside you is a little whisper of the divine truth of love that was whispered into your heart when you were created. And here are three tips for using that power for good. One is to make it uniquely your own, to find the piece that belongs uniquely to you, the message, the motivation, the mission that belongs uniquely to your own heart, and stand with that and take it out into the world. Live by it, live through it, and live up to it. The second is to connect with others who are doing the same and be intentional about how you use language to support and uphold each other. And the third most important thing is to recognize that we are in this together, and together we have the power to heal the world.
I love that. One of the African proverbs I always use is we can go far by ourselves, but we can go farther together. And as you mentioned, Gail, this is truly a call to action,
It is.
right? It's to unite, it's to make a difference, to use your influence for good.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to show the audience one more time. Uh, Stay tuned. The Heart's Voice, healing the world through language, love, and listening with Gail Dixon and other authors will be featured, and we'll be celebrating that on Celebrate Your National Claim Your Voice Day on May 19th. And if you're wondering how can you be a part of that, all the information is on the Facebook group, The Heart's Voice Movement. Again, The Heart's Voice Movement Facebook group. Thank you so very much,
Oh,
Gail.
thank you so much. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you.
I appreciate you and wishing you all the best. To our viewers on E360 TV and our other streaming partners, thank you for joining us for another edition of Power of the Pen. Just remember, in life and in business, when your vision intersects with opportunity, when you feel and live in your seat of power, success is inevitable, and you can be the change, as Gail is saying, to heal the world. So together we can do this.
Absolutely.
Thank you again, Gail.
Thanks, LaWanna.
We'll see everyone next week for another edition of Power the Pen.